Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Critical Sceptic podcast. For my first online video conversation, this is exciting for everyone involved. Today, I am very happy to be joined by a good friend, an ex-classmate, Athenianos. He's a politics and philosophy graduate at the University of Edinburgh. I'm going to check the name of the university you're currently at. He's a student and journalist at Northwestern. Is it Medill? Or
Medill School of Journalism.
Medill School of Journalism. Beautiful. And he's a writer for the Borgen Project currently. Or is that changed?
I'm going to correct quick thing.
Yeah, go.
No longer at Northwestern, graduated.
Okay, congratulations.
And right now I'm currently working as a journalist in upstate New York for a local newspaper.
Good man. How's that going?
It's good. 3 weeks in. A lot of chaos. When you're a local newspaper, people really care when their name is in the paper, and that's both good and bad, because people want to be in it, but also when you publish something that they did that was a mistake, or they made an error, or they were corrupt in some way, they get really mad that you let people know.
Okay. I guess there's like positive and perverse incentives for having your name published in any kind of publication, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's been good. A lot of corn, a lot of farmland, a lot of bureaucracy, so much bureaucracy. But yeah,
at the outlet or with the
town.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, no, been good. Good. And I'm super happy to be here. It's a pleasure, and big fan, and just hoping to have a great conversation.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. To start off with, I want this to be as close to the kinds of conversations you and I would have at university when we were studying or just arguing with each other in the library or in study rooms. And a part of that dynamic we had was that there was often music involved. So I'm gonna begin, because I'm trying out some themes for my podcast. I'm gonna begin by playing you some music. I hope you don't mind.
Sure.
So this is just a little something that I wrote or came up with. Maybe "write's" the wrong word. It's not very long.
Feels like I'm being courted.
You are. Right, that's me done showing off. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
What's it called?
Doesn't have a name. I've called it G something on my recording, my little audio notes thing on my phone, just because it's like something within the chord of G. I just so yeah, doesn't have a name yet.
What was the inspiration for that particular piece?
I was so I used to play guitar when I was 16 to like 18. It was a birthday present. And I learned a whole bunch of different songs. I never learned to read sheet music, but I would learn songs playing tab or stuff like that. And I gradually stopped playing in my 20s and forgot more and more things until eventually the only song that I knew was Hey There Delilah by the Plain White T's. And I now hate that song because it was the only thing I could play. And then COVID came around and I was lining up to starting uni, the first year of lockdowns kind of thing. And so I thought, well, I'll bring my guitar with me just so I've got something to do when I'm inside all the time. And the only thing I could remember besides Hey There Delilah were the 4 or 5 chords that I'd learned when I was young. So I think I learned 1 or 2 more songs, mostly using the same chords that I knew already. And then I decided I was just going to play around and try to just come up with stuff like finger picking, which is kind of how I used to play a lot of, but just using the chords that I knew. So it was just kind of just experimenting with placement and what sounded nice and sitting in my room for many, many hours during lockdown, just fiddling around with the guitar. And that was one of the things that came out of it. So to jump straight in, so the impetus for this conversation initially was the assassination of Charlie Kirk, that you and I were messaging kind of in the immediate aftermath, and when the story or the narrative that was being floated, that Tyler Robertson, lone gunman, dating a trans woman, a man identifying as a girl, and had carved Antifa messages on the bullet, and that his father and mother had seen him on a video and become suspicious that that was their son, and then convinced him, had talked him into speaking with a family friend, and then turning himself in. And your initial response to that was that this was weird, right? That this story that sounds strange. And my initial response, having just merely just heard the story, was that it, well, a little bit of confirmation bias had taken place, right? Is that story just plugged straight into a world that, into a narrative and a worldview that I adopt, still do, and have my reasons for. But, and then I seen you and others noticing weirdness of this, and then I started looking into it, as I should do, and would have done. And then the story kind of unraveled quite quickly. I'll be honest, it's been difficult paying attention consistently to how this has developed. I've noticed very similarly, like after the assassination attempt on Donald Trump last July, that this got about 10 days worth of mainstream media attention and then kind of moved to the background of conversation, at least on this side of the pond anyway, probably less than 10 days. And so the one person who I've been following in the build-up to this conversation, because I was looking for like a timeline. I was looking for, because like I said, it's been very busy and very difficult to pay attention to all of the details. But I was looking for somewhere where someone was constructing a timeline of events and passing out and following leads and looking at things that sounded weird. And the one person who I've consistently found to be doing this is Candace Owens. Now, before we get into any of the details, I just wanted to ask you about, so that's my little perception of events. I wanted to ask you to give me a similar account of your experience of finding out about it, your immediate thoughts. Correct me if I've gotten anything wrong, and then we can go from there, I think.
Well, a couple of things.
Yeah.
Number one, obviously, it only needs to be said, but it does need to be said. Um, an assassination of any kind, of anybody, um, I think is horrific, and especially when it's done in broad daylight in a situation like that.
Mm.
And we live in an age where video cameras are everywhere, not just because of surveillance and whatnot, but because everybody has a phone, everybody's constantly filming, and to see it take place in real time, to see somebody talking and debating lively, and then go to just instantly lifeless,
Mm.
deflated. I mean, it was like bullet hit, and I don't know if you saw the close-up
I
shot
did.
of.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the bullet hit, and then he just immediately fell over, and blood rushed out,
Yeah.
and you knew, it took a while for them to pronounce him dead, but you knew there was no chance.
You don't
Uh,
normally walk away from something like that. I think that's
no, no. Um, and the one thing I just wanted to say is, I know, I know that they said that there were messages inscribed on the bullet casings. Um, I don't know if those are like, I know that hey fascist, um, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Like that's um the Italian the song from the Italian communist era. Um, I don't know if they were Antifa messages. Um,
Mm.
maybe they were. I don't know. Um,
That was fair.
and then the other thing I was gonna say is you talked about, it's hard to keep up and things just change and the timeline just changes, and a lot of that is due to the 24-hour news cycle we have, but it's also a tactic.
Mhm.
And people on of all kinds on both sides, I think, are guilty of it. Um, I think Trump does this actually very well, where he keeps the news cycle running and constantly feeds things into the news cycle. So it makes it very hard to pay attention to one thing for a long time because new things are constantly happening. And it's kind of like this weird paradox where the more concerns, the more issues that you raise, the harder it is to actually address any of the issues and have consequences for something that you do wrong because people just can't keep up.
Mm.
And it's in some ways it's quite brilliant because it means the public is kind of always in this crazed state, but never really able to get to I mean, even the Epstein stuff, right? I thought that was gonna still, people were gonna not let go of that. And now, of course, it's in the news and of course people care, but people aren't talking about it as much on an everyday basis. We still don't really know what happened. We probably will never know. And that's just, people have lives, things happen, and people are going to forget about it. So that's one of the things I wanted to say. Now, to your point about the weirdness, look, I don't know what happened. I think the weirdest thing to me that was kind of like, what is this? Is they immediately arrested um, another dude, George Zimmer,
Mhm.
who, if you look up his biography, there's a lot of weird things going on. Like he was featured in some 9/11 video saying that he knew the towers were going to fall as soon as something
What's
like he
the
knew the towers were going to fall either as soon as the planes hit or right before. And then he also has gotten arrested for a bomb threat previously, and they found child pornography on him.
Mm.
Um, right after the event. So I thought that was weird. And then the fact that they arrested another guy right after, and then the fact that it took them 3 days to find the suspect when it's a college campus, heavily surveilled, cameras everywhere. I thought that was a little weird that it took them that long. And then the other thing is the story that you alluded to, where he gets away, he's scotch clear, and then his dad convinces him to turn himself in to the what was it, like the sheriff priest or the
Yeah, like an old family friend. I think he was a deputy to the sheriff or something like that.
you
Formerly.
know, I'm not a mastermind in crime and you know bandits, but if you're willing to do that, I don't understand how you could be in the headspace to turn yourself in 3 days after, when I mean, there's so many other things you could do. Like my first thought would be, you have a flight lined up at a nearby airport and you go to like South America or something,
Mm.
you know, get out of the country.
Right.
Um, or at least go somewhere farther away than just like 3 hours, down the road in Utah. Like the whole thing seems strange. And
Agreed.
I haven't been following that closely because, as you said, we all have lives, we all have things to do. And ultimately, a man died. We can't reverse that. And if we could, then maybe people would pay attention more, but we can't. And,
It would be good to do that.
I don't know. I'm curious to see what you think, because to me, there was things that seemed weird, but I can't justifiably jump to conclusions
No,
yet.
no, no, absolutely, absolutely. No, I think the proper thing to do in a situation like this is, um, is to borrow from the Pyrrhonian skeptics that we looked at a little bit, on our course. Is at this time, in this moment, is the suspension of judgment, because, like you said, there are tactics that people can deploy in certain circumstances. I think the question of whether he was a lone gunman should be on the table, whether there was accomplices, whether there was other organizations or influences involved. I think all of this stuff should be on the table. I don't think it should be ruled out. I think in any sensible circumstance when something happens like this, that all left, or like whether, like, had it have been the Trump attempt or any of the attempts that have happened to Democrats over the years, or the proper thing to do would be to, well, pause, right? Like, everyone needs to just stop for a second, because we have to figure out what just happened, right? And that requires the courage to suspend judgment for a time being, not indefinitely, as the Pyrrhonians would do. They would do it forever and to achieve blissfulness or whatever it was. So
I have a question for
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
And it's a hypothetical. Suppose, we found out, we had very concrete proof that this was an inside job by the FBI or the Israeli Mossad, as some people are suggesting,
Mm-hmm.
um, or some other foreign intelligence agency, and that was provable. Now what? What is that? The people who are suspecting this already question those agencies and think there's something highly problematic with them and corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, just as a hypothetical, like what then?
Yeah.
Right? Like, great, we figured out that the FBI was behind this. The FBI was behind MLK, JFK, Malcolm X, Charlie Kirk, you know, um, Abraham Lincoln, like whatever. Like the FBI wasn't even invented at that time, but whatever, you know.
That's what they'd have you believe.
Like, so what? Like, now what? You know, like okay, we have a corrupt intelligence agency in our government that does terrible, terrible things.
Right.
We know that because they are busy launching coups in other countries for no reason, overthrowing leaders, you know, or
Yeah,
holding civil wars because the um they don't like that, the government is trying to like give money to their own people and nationalize their own industry. Like,
sure.
we know this.
We know they do it. Yep.
So they've done one more terrible thing.
Yep.
Are we gonna take guns to the street and now just try to like
No.
overthrow, like, that's what I'm saying is,
No, but that's one of the versions of now what, and that's one of the undesirable versions of now what. I think there are other paths of now what that are less like reactionary and violent, right? And we don't need to go down that route because then we're not any different than how they conduct themselves, and would be punished for it immediately. It wouldn't work and or succeed. But I think the that we know that this happens, that we know that we have agencies that conduct themselves like this, and I'll tell you what, I was thinking about this as an example the other day. Tell me what you think. I was thinking about this as because I was talking to a few friends of mine about we have this thing at home at the moment about like an online like digital identity card, and there's like concerns about government overreach and data protection and the loss of civil liberties and things like that. And one of my friends said, he said, well, they already have all of your data, right? They already have all the information about you, right? Maybe it's in loads of disparate places, and what's the issue with having one more piece of infrastructure that kind of ties all those things together? And I was thinking about, well, there's the similar logic, I think, to living in a situation where you live in a town or a city where there is an incredible number of violence and like theft and robberies, right? And it just happens. We know it happens. You watch it happen every day. And then some other guy decides that he's going to start robbing and thieving and engaging in violence. And it happens, and you're like, well, look, this new thing happened. This another piece of violence, this other piece of theft and robbery has occurred. Like, I think it would be, defeatist, and you're consenting to it in a way to say, well, we know it happens. We already know that there's robbery and murder that happens on our street every day. What's one more instance of provable crime? Right? I like, you could take that attitude, but I think these things are a choice, and I think we are, like, as a society, as a civilization, I think we undermine ourselves or allow ourselves to be undermined in the world stage, whereby the critics within and without of the West or the US or Britain or any of these places, right? Like, why continue to give them ammunition, right? Like, because those are their arguments against us. Like, we watch our own institutions and constructs conduct themselves in reprehensible and unethical and improper ways, if you'd have asked most of the population. And those are the same arguments that are levied against us by our critics within and outside of us. And I think those things are choices. I don't think we have to, like, I'm not saying it's easy to do something about them. I'm just saying it's a choice, and we can, I don't know, well, there's more of us than there are of them, right? There's like I don't know what to do about this exactly. I just don't like, I refuse to take the defeatist position, would be my response to the hypothetical.
Yeah, I guess throughout history, right? The people that question the narratives, the people that say something different, it's almost never the case that they're able to convince the mass public
Right.
to, you know, um, understand or be on their side, so to speak. Not exactly. I don't even mean they're launching a civil war and they want to, but to
No, to
understand
turn
them.
public opinion.
What usually happens is the opposite.
Sure.
The public turns on them. How dare you question the narrative? How dare you disrupt this? And you get a Socrates. You get a Jesus Christ. You get a Gandhi. You get um, a later in his life MLK, right? And it's just this to me is the way we need to think is we know that the mass public is not going to, just on a fly side with the people who are this is really sketchy and we need to completely change things. No, because most people want to. I think there's what's the Isaac Newton principle? Um, an object in motion stays in motion and an object at rest stays at rest.
Mhm.
It seems like there is a human propensity for stability, for um, comfort, for just maintaining the status of things. And
Uh-huh.
I think we just have to accept it. If you want to question the narrative and have reason to do, you will be outcast by a lot of people. And the more you speak up, probably the worse it will be for you. And it seems to me more and more evident that that is just a fact of human society. Is the more you speak up in deference to the status quo, the more you will suffer for it.
In criticism of the status quo.
In criticism of the status quo, and again,
Oh, I think that's
it,
fair.
it's a inverse relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
The more power you get, and the more sway you get, and the more um, voices listening to you, the stronger the backlash.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I don't disagree with that. But I don't think that doesn't make it not worthwhile to do. Jude, have you heard of William Wilberforce?
No.
No. Okay, I'll tell you a quick story. William Wilberforce in the late 1700s was a member of Parliament in Britain and earlier in his life an evangelical Christian, and he was the driving force behind the abolition movement in Britain against slavery. And for about 30 years, maybe longer, this guy floated bills in the House of Parliament to gradually move away from the slave trade, and loads of that, which was just immediately rejected. This man was attacked in the street. He was a pariah. People wouldn't even turn up to the debates in the Houses of Parliament. And he kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, despite the fact that everybody hated him for it. And in the early 19th century, I think it was around 1833, right, eventually to a full House of Parliament where this man was applauded and celebrated, we passed an act that abolished the slave trade in the empire. And it was unthinkable for the entirety of that man's career. That achievement was unthinkable. It was presumed to be like just a part of the way of the order of things, right? That this was not something that was ever going to be abolished. Many people were in favor of it, and the man was a pariah. He wasn't killed. He was attacked, but he undid the slave trade in one of the largest empires on the planet ever on his own.
I have something to say about that.
Yeah, go for it.
So we've talked a lot about in private about picking your battles.
Yeah, we have spoken
right. And I think this is maybe something was a source of disagreement that we had.
Sure.
And I'm still going to hold to my guns here, which is a cause like abolishing the slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that is something that is tangible. It's produced an immense amount of good, and one that I would say is you are 100% justified in doing whatever it takes, even getting killed, to end it.
Okay.
And and there could be even other, like, there's plenty of causes I think that are worth dying for, actually. I'm not saying that you should sacrifice your life for, but if it comes to the point where it's give up the cause or die, probably the right moral choice is to die fighting for it. But I don't know if that's every cause.
Okay.
And I don't know that as a strategic, like, let's just take the Charlie Kirk thing, because we've been talking about that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that this is what you or anybody else is doing. I'm just saying this hypothetical, right? If you put your life on trying to find who actually killed Charlie Kirk, is that in your estimations a good, how do I say this? I'm trying to be strategic here, because like, my point is there ways to, if you really care about the issue of who killed Charlie Kirk, and you think that the government, let's say he's your best friend, you took away your best friend, and it bothers you to pieces.
Mm.
Well, one option is you could stake your life on trying to hold the FBI accountable for killing your best friend. And I think in some ways that is noble. If somebody killed your best friend pointlessly, you would want to do everything you can to hold them accountable for what they did.
Naturally.
But for people like you and I, we didn't, and everybody else, we don't know Charlie Kirk personally. We not even particularly like the guy. But, is there ways to address what is a symptom of a problem by attacking its roots and focusing on its roots? And I think that's sometimes where I think I have some, like, criticism of some people when they focus their energy on attacking like leaves of the tree, and they go really hard on trying to prove that like this leaf is counterfeit when you have a whole tree and the roots are founded on false grounds. And I just wish sometimes that when people focus a lot of their energy on causes, they focus more on the roots as opposed to the branches and the leaves.
No, that's fair enough, and I completely agree with you actually on that, and I think that's kind of what I was getting at. Well, firstly, we should say that we don't know what happened with Charlie Kirk. This could have just been a case of stochastic terrorism and the random violence of a damaged and deranged young man who suddenly decided to do something, up into all of the stuff that we've been talking about. My example about the abolition of the slave trade was I was using that as an analogy to what we already know about how our countries conduct themselves, about the rot that is at the root of the tyranny, external and internal tyranny of our own societies. So I think that's what that analogy was getting at. But then to kind of push back on your, yes, Charlie Kirk was one man. He wasn't any of our best friends. You may or may not have liked the guy or what he spoke about, but the problem with political violence is that men are often then representative of something, right? And I don't know. It's like imagine what was his name? Was it Thomas Crooks or Matthew Crooks or something? The guy who tried to shoot Trump, right? Imagine we live. Huh? Well,
Thomas Crooks was his name.
Thomas Crooks. Thank you. Yeah, I think so. Matthew's my name. I don't know where that came from.
Did you kill Donald Trump? Did you try to kill Donald Trump?
Hey, it was a slopey roof, man. I almost couldn't stand on it. It was, no, but imagine we lived in the world where he hadn't have turned his head, right? And that had been a successful assassination of a president. Now, whatever the reality of the situation is, again, from lone gunmen through to collusion and corruption within the CIA, FBI, or some other organization. And it's difficult in America because, and I'm not opposed to the Second Amendment. I've come to understand its purpose. I understand why people criticize it. But you do live in a country where just people have guns. And those kinds of things are not desirable, but they're a trade-off or a cost of arming a population for the purpose of defending it against the power of the state, compared to places like Britain where the state has guns and nobody else does. But my point was that these seem like, again, not assuming the truth of what has happened here, but speaking generally about the rot and corruption at the root of our societies that undermines us, both internally and externally. Like, these seem like worthwhile causes to pit ourselves against. Because if we use things like chattel slavery might not be happening, but you gave the example of the coups, right? Of our interference in foreign lands, right? The death and destruction and the encouragement of different kinds of corruption, or the tyranny within our own states, right? Like in my country, where we arrest more people for the things they say online and in public than countries like Russia, right? Where people are afraid to speak about certain issues. Right now, I'm not living in a hellhole, right? And I'm like, where we do have issues with law and order. We do have issues with immigration. We do have issues with energy, right? But again, I just come back to my point earlier, which is I think all of these things are choices. We don't have to put up with these things being imposed on us simply because some people have decided that it should be. So like these seem like to your point about picking your battles. Like, yeah, I mean, there's a calculation to be made when you're engaging with an issue, right? These seem like worthwhile issues to pit ourselves against. And just one last thing. You said earlier about some human beings, being at rest, right? Like just some people just want to be secure and they want to be left alone and they don't want to pay attention to all of this shit. And as long as they know what the rules are, more or less, they're quite happy to just keep their head down, crack on, and do all the rest of it. I think that is a tendency. I do see like counterexamples, especially after COVID, where the number of people who realized that the world that they lived in wasn't the one they thought they lived in, and are confused and upset and are increasingly active. Where we've seen riots, and I'm not condoning the violence that happened in them at all for a second, and we've also seen very large protests, hundreds of thousands of people who are, again, confused and worried and concerned about the decisions that our governments, left or right, seem to be making, irrespective of what people think about them. Yes, people have that tendency, but I think they can be, you can turn a corner and have something slap you in the face and you're like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Or you see something that stirs something within you. And I think that's where we are, both in your country and in mine.
I wanna focus on the second point you just made.
Yeah.
But I want to just first say something about the first
Sure.
thing really quickly, and then I'll move to the second. We talked earlier about how it's really hard to pay attention to something because the cycle changes really fast, and things turn over really quickly, and when you're trying to focus on one thing, something else happens, and then when you're trying to focus on that thing, something else happens, and da 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 da. And to me, those things are what I would call the leaves and the branches. But the trunk of the tree, the roots of the tree are not moving. They're not changing. They are still in place. And you can focus on, if you focus your attention on the roots as opposed to the branches, you have something firm and steady that you can focus on. That's all I want to say about that. When you were talking about, the basically what you were describing was tensions and people on nerve, and after COVID, and people feeling like this is not the world that I thought I was living in, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think by every single metric, in our two societies, you find that we are living in an increasingly polarized society. Whatever the side you are on, whatever the issue you may be, there is an immense amount of tension and polarization in our societies at this current moment. And that is something that I think is worth addressing, because the fact of the matter is, there will be another murder. There will be another school shooting in this country. There will be another, horrific act of violence. There'll be another. I don't know what's happening in the UK. I don't really pay attention anymore because there's too much happening in this country. But I'm sure there'll be another riot. I'm sure there'll be another event that people are crazy about, blah, blah, blah. Like, that will happen. And people will censor each other, and then people will retaliate against that censorship, and then people will continue to act as if because you have a different viewpoint than me, you are the enemy. And I think we are at a stage where we need to tone that down. And until we do, and until we solve that issue, we're going to see a lot more of just what I would call civil terror. That's a terrible word for it. But like, just
I don't think so.
It's
a little oxymoronic, but
a little oxymoronic. I realize that as I said it, but
by one of the meanings of civil, there's two meanings of civil.
Yeah. But you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
there
will be, to me, the issue to focus on right now is the tension issue. It's the it's the division issue. It's we can't have conversations with each other because if we find out that there's a point that we disagree about, now we're enemies.
Okay.
And there's another part of this conversation that I think is important, but I think as of right now, it's, among us citizens, one of the most important things for us to do is to figure out how to respect each other again.
I agree. No, I think the division and tension is the right place to focus, but I think there's a way in which these are the same, like, it's the same problem, right? Because you have to ask the question, like, cui bono? In whose interest is it that we are divided? In whose interest is it that we argue with each other about race? Whose interest is it that we argue with each other about vaccination status, about autism, about the climate, about energy, about it, like who's... So, and I think there's a couple of answers to that question. There are obvious perverse incentives set up by very large industries like the pharmaceutical industry, the agricultural industry, military-industrial complex, even the new tech industry, right? There are the billions and billions of dollars to be made, and not necessarily the people who have the moral fortitude not to sacrifice the well-being and lives of other people for the sake of making money. That's an age-old problem. There's the control and influence that, again, these organizations like MI6, CIA, FBI, right, that they get to have over aspects of the world or aspects of the people in their own countries, right? And again, these are like, so I have an issue with how we think about government. Or I think we make a mistake because we're when we have a principle of when we deal with people of giving them the benefit of the doubt, right? Like the kind of like Hanlon's razor, Hanlon's principle, which is presumed stupidity before malevolence. But you give somebody the benefit of the doubt because they probably something bad happens. Someone's probably just fucked up, or they've not been paying attention, or they've done something stupid, right? Rather than they were hand wringing and scheming the whole time. But I don't, and I think we should apply that to individual human beings. I think that's the right precautionary take to judge our fellow men and women. But I don't think we should take that approach with constructs. I don't think we should take that approach with concentrations of power, money, and influence. I think the starting point should be the presumption of these are sites that are going to attract weasels and snakes, the things that eat the things that eat the valuable things in our lives. Weasels and snakes eat your eggs because they're drawn to them. And I think well, like again, I think that's what those things are. They are they're constructs. They're these institutions, and they serve a benefit, but they are perverse incentives. And I think I don't know, we don't forget it as such because we assume our politicians lie to us, and we assume people are scrambling around after money, but we at the same time give them the benefit of the doubt and like let them keep doing it. The pharmaceutical company where you take away the ability for them to be sued for damage they cause for the production of things that we inject into people. And it's like, okay, well, then they're going to go and make a bunch of shit because it makes them some money in the short term, and you can't sue them for it. It's like probably not smart. And I'm like, again, it's like I think those things are decisions. I think those are choices. I don't think they're things we have to accept. And I think there'll be circumstances with all of these things. It's very like similar issues. I'm not clued in on all of them, and I might be wrong about some of them, but
I don't even think I know what weasels are, to be honest.
oh, they're little like uh do you know what a ferret is?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like a ferret. It's like a weird long fox ferret thing. Eats eggs.
I like foxes.
Yeah, foxes. I like foxes too. I, but they'll also eat your chickens if you let them like that. Like that. If you put a concentration of chickens, there'll be foxes nearby.
Well, listen, are we saying that chickens are worth more than foxes in society?
No.
Okay, that's besides the point. Um, listen, I'm gonna tell you a story.
Yeah, please. I love stories.
I was in Latvia this February. I don't know if you guys know Latvia. It's a country in the Baltics. They like folk dancing and just they're like a very what's the word? It's a folk country. I mean, it's like it's rooted in. There's so much folklore that influences everything. They're also a former Soviet republic, but um, there is a Russian speaking minority in the country. Um, Not to be confused with ethnic Russian, but Russian speaking. And I was there in February on a reporting trip, and I was interviewing young Russian speaking students in the capital in Riga about their population and the issues they face.
Uh-huh.
And this is not me, discovering this. It's known that there is division between the Russian speaking population and the Latvian speaking population. Um, and it's rooted in a couple of things. Um, but almost every single young person I spoke to in the capital said a couple of things. They consider themselves Latvian. They speak Latvian as well. They want to be integrated to the society. They feel like they don't even belong to any country because they feel Latvian. They speak Latvian. They go to Latvian schools, and yet they're treated differently by their own people. And then they all pretty much told me, and some of them actually quoted this. They said, I don't think it's actually the people's issue. I think the government is stoking this division because, quote, it's like Napoleon's divide and no, it's like Machiavelli's divide and conquer.
Yes.
And I think that is important because I do think that there are forces, as you said, that are stoking a division. But at the same time, they can stoke it, but it's up to us to not let them actually succeed. that's the thing I'm trying to get at is, they can employ all their tactics they want to try to make us hate each other.
Yep.
And it's useful. And they do this to movements all the time as they try to create subdivisions within the group.
Okay.
But, it's up to us to not let them. The onus is upon us to be like, no, we're not going to let ourselves be divided and manipulated in this way. Because ultimately, to me, the stronger division is between those who have power, and I'm speaking about, ruling power in the sense, and those of us who do not. And those of us who are want decisions that are ultimately, we have the general public in mind, and those of us who are making decisions purely for our own self-interest and actually don't want what's best for the public.
Sure.
And so all of this to say, yes, I agree with you that there are forces and people that want us divided. But this is one of the instances where it's on us to not let that happen. We don't really have, if a government wants to interfere with a foreign country's elections and to launch a coup, we can't, we're not going to be able to, as an ordinary citizen, to get in the way of that and like hijack the plane, stop. Maybe we can. But
we don't have to hijack planes. I think there's other ways.
Well, if they're launching a coup that nobody knows about until afterwards.
No, that's fair.
It's much harder to tangibly stop that than it is for us to.
No, but we can make it more difficult for them to muddy the waters to be able to get away with it. Look, I agree with you again, about that. It is on us, right? It is on us to make sure that this doesn't happen, and that you aren't torn apart by someone trying to get between people, right? Like bring this down to like an interpersonal relationship, right? Say like you and I are friends, right? And some other actor, for some other reason, has decided that for their interests or for whatever, that Matt and Athen shouldn't be friends anymore, right? It's in their interest that we don't get along and that we're at loggerheads with each other, because then we're not paying attention to whatever's going on, right? Now, what they will be doing, presuming that they're doing this intelligently and like not stood there poking me and going, it was Athen, right? That what they'll be doing is they'll be creating signals in the world, right, for you and I to respond to, that we take as parts of our reality and that elicit a certain emotional primal responses that cause us to engage in disagreement and up to and including conflict, right? Now, those signals will seem like parts of the world. They'll seem like organic parts of the world. They won't look like someone trying to fuck around with us, right? And in order for us to yes, we could have some solid principles that allows us to resolve even the strongest of difficulties, even if they're fabricated or real. So maybe it doesn't work. But let's blow this up again, right? Because most people are responding emotionally and immediately to the things that are being, to the degree to which they're being put against each other, they're responding like as if those things are a part organically of the world. And in order for them to get to the point where they can choose not to let that happen, it is informative to know where it's coming from, is my point. Right? Yes, it is on us to make sure that we aren't torn apart, but it's easier to do that when you know someone's trying to fuck with you. If you don't know someone's trying to fuck with you, then the fuckery works because it's the world. It's true. It's an organic part of the world. If
But
that makes sense.
can we, even if we don't know exactly who it's coming from,
Right.
the fact that we know that it's happening, can we still combat it? Can we still prevent it from succeeding? I think we can.
Even without knowing.
Even without knowing exactly who it's coming from.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm with you there. It doesn't need to be exactly, right? Because it's not obvious who it's coming from, right? But I think the knowing that you're being fucked with is helpful for doing what you're saying, which is what resisting against the temptation. It doesn't need to be exactly, because again, they'll be making steps to make it difficult for you to place your finger on exactly, which is why concepts like conspiracy theorists exist, to put people off listening to people who are trying to describe things that may actually be happening. So it's difficult to pin down the truth.
Well, I think, like, if we start with a starting point of, like, they want us to hate each other, so we should try to resist hating each other, which I don't think is necessarily 100% true, but I don't think it's a bad starting point. If we just decided collectively that we're going to work really hard to not hate each other, because there are these evil forces that are trying to make us hate each other. And so at any instance of we're trying to unravel instances of hating each other. I don't think that's like a terrible starting point to have. I think it's not entirely true that in all instances of people hating each other that it's manifested by somebody else.
No. Of course.
Unless you want to say it like in religious terms, that it's the devil.
He's always about.
He is always a bad one, but and the greatest trick the devil ever made was convincing the world that he didn't exist.
Yes.
It's a quote from a really good movie, which I'm blanking on the title, but just go type in the quote into Google and you'll find the movie.
I've heard the quote before.
But the point is, as long as we know that there's things at play that are trying to make us have disdain for each other, that to me is plenty to work with.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's what I was trying to drill at with my point about how we should treat constructs, governments, institutions where they are concentrations of power, money, and influence. Right? If the starting assumption in the face of those is that they're going to be attracting weasels, right, who are going to be poking people and trying to pitch people against each other because it serves some benefit of theirs, then that's the starting point that you're talking about, I think. Like, you don't need to know exactly which weasel it is or, like, which cabal of snakes or whatever, but you start with the assumption that what's coming out of the signals that are coming out of these constructs are coming through channels of power, money, and influence. But it's tricky because it doesn't. I don't know. It's something like. And look, there's probably a way in which we can have a serious conversation about the structure of our educational infrastructure, like our educational systems. Like, have we been educating our populations to be, like, sufficiently skeptical and critical in a healthy sense of the information that comes to them in the world, or have they been encouraged through education to be emotional, right? To be for it to be easy for someone to come along and go hook and pull you in certain directions, because you haven't been provided with the toolkit or with the frameworks for critically and skeptically engaging with the signals that come through your phone, through your computer, through the mainstream news outlets, through alternative news outlets. Because I think that's a big part of the story is that in, starting from the starting position that you want to, in in explaining how we wound up in this position where we have like adults, like I think our education systems have failed in this regard for like 2.5 generations, right? For a significant amount of time. It's like 40, 50, 30, 40 years of an increasing number of people in our populations not being equipped with the tools and kits and frameworks they need for critically and skeptically engaging with whatever comes out of the government, because it may be benevolent, right? We may have benevolent governments who are honestly telling the truth and who are engaging in righteous wars and who aren't fucking everyone over at every possible opportunity they get, right? But the problem is it's hard to tell the difference between the two, because when they're not, like, again, another devil quote or devil reference, right? The devil doesn't appear as the devil; he appears as a nun or as a nurse, right? Or as a mentor or as a friend, right? He appears as a doctor stood in front of a podium reading statistics about COVID-19, right? And it looks like someone trying to help you, but it's not obvious, because it might be someone trying to help you, but it might not be. You can't tell, right? So you need to have some tools and skills to be able to engage with that. Otherwise, you can just be dragged around in whatever direction someone wants to.
Okay, a question for you, and then a comment.
Go for it.
What are those tools and skills? And then, not to bring it back to the Charlie Kirk thing, but the narrative of this leftist turned individual by university is so filled with hatred that he decides to go and shoot up a right-wing podcaster speaking at a university. Well, that's regardless of whether or not it's true, that's a fantastic narrative for making people hate each other and escalating tensions.
It is, isn't it?
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it is. I was like, yeah, doesn't surprise me. That story.
My next thing would be go have, a left wing. Okay. If I was trying to create more division from the government standpoint, or I'm not even going to say the government, from anybody who's trying to create division, I would have some scenario where there's two groups that are on opposing sides of something, and I would have one person from one group kill another person from another group, and then the person of the group that got killed escalate that by killing more people on the other side, and just have it escalate. Rah, rah, rah. Now, I actually think in some ways it's more beneficial to the forces, may they be, to have it not escalate that fast, because then, once you have a civil war or whatever, then it's like the public is like, okay, we really need to tone things down and find a way to be unified. And it's like the cat's out of the bag. But if you just kind of like sprinkle these violent incidents here and there, then it's like, yeah, okay, this is terrible and we condemn political violence, but let's go back to hating each other. Because, in actuality, I hate you. But it's terrible what happened. I condemn it. Horrible, awful thing. But this is just a crazy incident of some one kook. Let's go back to hating each other. And then the other side is like who had the person killed is like, oh, we really hate you now. We really hate you now. And then, there'll be another incident sprinkled in here and there, and it'll just that would be my recipe for preserving hatred if I was trying to act as the devil here.
Okay.
I'm gonna go back to my question. We can talk about the diagnosis all we want.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're in agreement that, and I think this is not a controversial point, that there is a lot of division, a lot of tension, a lot of hate, a lot of animosity that people feel towards each other in both of our countries. And it needs to be toned down. The question, though, is what medication are we taking? What's and I don't mean that literally. I mean that in like, what do we do to fix it? What tools, what pills, what bricks do we have in our cabinet to actually solve this issue?
Well, so the tools and skills I was referring to were things like, the kind of training that you and I have been through at university. You were with politics and philosophy. You're now a journalist. One of the
Came the enemy.
no, we need like
That's a
no
joke.
journalists. We need good. No, as long as you're a good journalist, that's the condition. You have to be a good one. No, but okay, but on that, like, what's the prerequisites for being a good journalist, right? And what are the prerequisites for confronting the world as it appears to you, whether it's another person in front of your face, or in a newspaper, or in a book, or on a TV, or on a smartphone, and on social media, and the kind of traditional mode of critical thinking, where you are taught to like carefully read and think about what it is that you are confronted with, where you have the courage and the conviction to suspend judgment when you are not sure about something. You do not allow yourself to be pulled around by emotive language, that you're capable of recognizing it when it's put in front of you. This was I remember when I was back in my GCSEs, like when I was like 15, 16, and they're teaching you about like the World War and propaganda, and one of the first things that they teach you about is sort of like the like what to look out for within propaganda, and things like emotive language are like high up on the list. And I also remember a kind of lesson where I think as a class we were given a picture of something, right? And we were asked to interpret the picture. Right, what's going on in this picture? Right, and we all had a talk and a discussion, and we came to some kind of shared interpretation of what was happening in this, maybe with one or two differences. And then the next picture they would show us would be of the same scene, just including considerably more of the context. Right, and now we were asked to interpret the picture again. Right, and especially the part that we were looking at before. And I don't remember what the image is. I just remember the exercise. But the interpretation is different, right? It's a lesson in there are editorial decisions that are made, right? When any news outlet, any government infrastructure, any people, right? People can make editorial decisions about what to show you. And they also make decisions about what not to show you. And to remember things like this, right? And I'm also talking about training in sort of basic propositional logic, right? So you can recognize a contradiction, right? You can recognize fallacies. You can recognize absurd reasoning when it's put in front of you. And again, what we spoke about before, remembering that there are, when you're interpreting, again, content written, spoken, published, that there are interests. Who is the person telling me this? Right? What interests do they have? What financial commitments do they have? What political commitments do they have? Right? These are all like the basics of critical thinking and the basics of logical reasoning. Now, I'm not claiming to be an expert or like highly trained in any of these things. I'm not, right? I consider myself a novice in this domain still, right? But it was, I don't know, it was kind of baffling to me that these things it took me until I'm 33, right? I didn't go to university till I was 28, right? And then I learned these things, and in some cases had to seek them out myself still, but I was like baffled that, well, these things are conceptually deliverable to teenagers, right? Like these are like not like small children, because you need a certain amount of capacity to think in abstract ways, but we don't teach people. We don't teach people that. What you're taught in school nowadays is to presuppose things like white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy. These kind of boogeyman monsters, and that you are encouraged to be emotional and to be an activist and to seek change and to that you are primed in school for you to be manipulable as you move into adulthood. And again, I come back to, this is a choice. We can choose not to do this. Those are the skills and the tools that I'm talking about.
So it sounds like what you're saying is the solution is to be a critical skeptic.
That's why that's the name of the. I know, right? It's like every hammer needs a nail. But no, yes, right. I like it's in part one of the reasons why I named my podcast The Critical Skeptic, because I became aware in my mid-20s that like a lot of the ideas I had in my head weren't mine. A lot of the things I believed, I didn't have reasons for believing. I just adopted them, and they were a part of my world. And in many cases had led me to do and say and be not very nice. And this upset me. But there's two places. There's an internal and external approach to resolving this problem. You spoke about the internal one earlier, and I think both of these are relevant, which is, something like you can't control what happens in the world, but you can certainly control how you respond to it. And in part, my going to university was trying to correct for the fact that some like people, not necessarily around me, but ideas that weren't mine had been glued into my worldview from various different places, and I wasn't happy about that. And yeah, the adoption of critical thinking and a healthy amount of skepticism were kind of the things I wanted to acquire by going to university, because I didn't have them.
I mean, I think anybody that's a philosophy student is gonna feel the same way, that what we need is, they might disagree about what exactly critical thinking entails,
Sure,
but
they do.
nobody's going to say, no philosophy student is going to say we need more critical thinking, more deep reflection, more skepticism.
No, I'm
questioning
saying some. Saying some.
some.
Yeah.
Well, again, I don't think any person that's studied philosophy is going to disagree with that. I have so I do want to bring this up. We in our fourth year, which is now 2 years ago. It's crazy to think.
I know, right?
Um,
How time flies.
we yeah. So it was the Israeli Palestinian October 7th, and then the aftermath, and that was we were kind of like immersed in that, and there were demonstrations, there was high tensions, et cetera, et cetera. And me and you were just like, we just want to understand more, right? We just want to sit down and like, can we have a conversation with these two groups, hash it out for people to see, and like let the general public understand, ask questions, and hear both perspectives. And oh my goodness, the amount of trouble we went through to try to even put on like one event with two independent scholars, let alone get people from either side to talk to each other, which we failed to do
Yes.
because, I mean, every email we wrote was like, are you going to, is there going to be people from the other side there? If so, no, thank you. Basic, right? Am
Yeah.
I
No, no, no.
misrepresenting that?
Some of the emails were organized like
Um,
that.
and then we ended up having the discussion, which I think was a very nuanced, um, and for me, very helpful picture of, the early history of Israel, Palestine, and really went into a lot of the nuance. And I think has been received very well by a lot of people for the fact that we were able to do that, to hold a discussion where people talk about a subject that is highly spoken about in the news and has people's emotions very high. And we were able to hold a civil, nuanced, critical discussion about it in a university setting. And I'm not saying that
When?
to give ourselves a pat on the back.
Oh, okay.
I'm
I'll get
saying
it.
that because the public response to that event, since we did it, has been indicative that there is an appetite for people who are able to get into nuance and to
Right.
ask critical questions and to go deep into issues and to um, unravel simple narratives. And I think if there is a way that more students can find ways to, because I don't think it's going to come from the universities directly for two reasons. Number one, there's a lot of subjects that they don't want to touch.
Yes.
And number two, anytime it's like a university sponsored event, it has a certain, um, reputation or kind of like, um, uh, cachet that's attached to it, where people feel like, oh, it's going to be, we're not actually going to be able to like get into things because it's going to be very like
Right.
heavily
Right.
moderated, and they want to like, this is for their PR. I think more students need to be willing to create those spaces where they can have those types of discussions, on a wide ranging topic of issues and bring people in that manner. And I think, as you said, the public would highly, highly benefit from that. The other part of the discussion is we, in my estimation, live in an age where unless you are one of these people who are making a lot of money from holding podcasts and speaking about issues, and you're successful at it, which is very hard to do. And often I think the ones that are most successful are not the best at dissecting things. What they're very good at is, doing what cable news does in a slightly different way, in a longer form, where, they're catered to specific audiences, right? There's, you in the same way that you have Fox News and MSNBC, now you have plenty of right-wing podcasters and plenty of left-wing podcasters. And they sometimes do a good job of bringing people from both sides onto the subject. And, there's
not all made equal.
They're not all made equal, but I think for the most part, a lot of them cater to specific audiences and have a niche audience.
Sure.
And even if they don't, and ones that do it, quote unquote, correctly, it's very hard to get to that stage and only a select few. And
the Pareto distribution.
We live at a time when what's at the forefront of the industry? It's computer science, it's statistics, it's AI, it's data analysis, it's engineering, right? It's banking, it's stock trading. Those are the kind of lucrative, or I guess those are the jobs that I would say are most sought after if your goal is to be successful, right? If you just polled people on the street and said, what degree is going to make you more successful? The philosophy degree or the engineering degree? The mechanical engineering degree, right? It's always software engineering. It's always going to be that one.
Sure.
And partly because of the polarization that we have, I think there's a sector of young people and older people who, yes, there are some who are speaking out and willing to have like nuanced, real, boring discussions. Some of it is boring, right? Some of it, when you get into the weeds of something, will be boring for people. But a large portion of them are saying, why would I risk putting my views out there? Why would I risk, recording a podcast where I'm speaking out on an issue that's highly sensitive, highly polarized? I'm giving a kind of boring version of it that's nuanced and detailed, but nobody's going to listen because it's not sensational. And I'm going to be spending a lot of time doing it when I can and school costs a lot of money. I could go get an engineering degree, get a degree in AI science, get a great return on my investment. And, I'm going to have a good job.
Sure.
I'll probably have a good spouse or partner. we'll have a big house, life will be good.
Yep.
And yeah, there's some things in the world that I disagree with, but the cost of shutting up is fine. As long as I get to do, as long as I get to have these
Sure.
things in my
Yeah,
life.
I'm sure people make that calculation.
And I'm not going to be like too critical of that because, there are like having a good family, having a nice house, having a good job. None of those things are like inherently bad things and bad things to be
No.
to desire, right? Like you can't fault somebody for wanting, the kind of simple life, so to speak, uncontroversial, good family, there's some things here and there, but ultimately like you gave through life and, you set your kids up for college and they're going to be engineers, they're going to take over the business, whatever.
Sure.
So the problem is, how do you convince enough of those types of people that there's enough of a crisis for them to say, you know what? It is too important for me not to, because I think we need to bring back the value of a I was going to say liberal arts degree, but I think a humanities, a real humanities degree. We need to we need to help convince people that there is real value, necessary value in doing what me, you, a lot of other philosophy students are actually doing. And like we need there needs to be some way, and I'm not saying like a targeted ad campaign, like,
Sure.
you want to be a sheep in this world? Well, if you don't, study philosophy, pick up Aristotle, and,
Yeah. That'll sell. That'll sell.
Nietzsche and Aristotle, guys who were banished from their communities, and one guy who died after, being crippled after, like, having
Seeing
a
a
weird
horse.
reaction to a horse. That's your guy.
That's your
That's
guy.
your man. Or the guy who, walked around homeless, convincing people that they were all idiots and then being made to drink arson to death, hemlock, for doing it, and, killed for it. That's your guy,
Yeah.
or, the guy who's, Diogenes living in the bathtub. That's your, you know what I mean? Like,
No, I'm with you.
I don't know how you,
So,
because we're in agreement on the value of it. I just don't know if, like, there's enough people who see it the same way that we do.
right. So I think that calculation you were talking about a second ago, about the like seeing the value of a humanities degree and like I'm going to make more money and be more stable and successful if I go and do engineering or computer science or whatever it is. Like if that's how you're thinking, you shouldn't do a philosophy degree, right? Philosophy, like I say to people all the time, when I told my friends or my family I was going to go to university and study philosophy, they said, well, what can you do with that? Right now, those skills I spoke about earlier, they're transferable. You can take those in many places. But as I said then, and I still say now, I said you don't go into philosophy for the money, right? You go into the, I mean, I'm saying philosophy and not the humanities because I think there are increasingly circles of the humanities that you can go into for the money. But yeah, it's something that's it's good in and of itself to do. And I think And I think people are realizing the value of these things, which is why the sort of podcast landscape, and particularly those who do a good job of not only like passing out nuances in difficult conversations, but like in, deliver an education, and not through lectures or through like little slideshows and PowerPoint presentations, but they provide an education in how to assess the world around you by demonstration of them doing that. Right? That they teach people how to think critically. They teach people how to assess information that comes to them by doing that in front of people and providing them with an example of how to do it. And I think those kinds of things, like even the people who want to go into computer science or engineering or business, and who are then going to go and live a quote unquote simple life, as you put it, and which is like a beautiful thing to have, right? To just, it's life, right? It's what we're here to do, is right to be and make enough so that you can meet someone, settle down, have a family, reproduce, move into the future, right? But like you're like throughout all of that, you are going to be confronted by the daily challenges of life. Your kids are gonna lie to you, right? People in your life are gonna betray you. There's gonna be the small scale stuff, right? And it's still beneficial for you to have exactly the same tools and skills I was referring to earlier, which is why I was talking about our education systems, right? And I don't understand how these things, because I mean, just think about it, right? Think about the world we live in, right, compared to 100 years ago, and think about the percentage of the population who goes to school compared to 100 years ago or 120 years ago. You know, like everybody goes to school now. Everybody, unless you're having a really bad time, right? Most people go to some kind of schooling, and everyone goes to some kind of schooling. And what we don't provide them with the skills and tools they need to just confront life, which you could deliver. Like you can abstract or derive accessible principles from critical thinking, from logic, that you can deliver to 12, 13-year-olds and onwards, right? Like you don't have to go to modal logic or like Aristotelian syllogisms, right? There's ways of delivering these things in practice, and again, they don't have to just be lectures on chalkboards or whiteboards, right? They can be embodied and engaged in and demonstrated by the teacher who is trained in these things, and just delivers them in practice and demonstrates their value and delivers those skills like those people who are acquiring them now in podcasts. So I think those kinds of, that kind of training in the humanities is, I'm not saying everybody go and do a humanities degree. I'm saying more or less the exact fucking opposite, right? At the moment, stay away from the humanities, right? But if we lived in a world where they were what we think they should be, and the teachers and this, I'm not saying this doesn't happen at all. Of course it does. It's just, again, the institutional capture, academia has not escaped it. And the people who become teachers, right? These are the people who should be trained in these skill sets, and then so they can deliver them. You don't have to get everybody into the institution to teach them, right? You can provide these lessons in practice and demonstrate their value through schooling, and then they can leave, and then they can do their engineering. They can become a doctor. They can become a computer scientist. They can become a teacher. They can go to philosophy, do philosophy if they want to. They can do whatever. But you've provided them with a solid foundation of how to move through the world. And my point earlier was we send everybody to school and then don't do that. And that's a little absurd.
Got it. Makes sense. And I also think like we would benefit from just encouraging like to me in high school, every single high school across the country should have to read. I'm partly biased, but Nicomachean Ethics and Plato's Republic.
High school.
High school.
Okay. Yeah.
You know?
I'm not opposed to the idea. No, I think expose it, like, because you don't have
but
to.
even
Sorry, I'm
I
interrupting.
was just saying, but like, okay, maybe that's like too extreme, and there's so many philosophy books. But the reason I said that is because we need to encourage, in my opinion, people to read those types of books, even when they're not doing a humanities degree, because most philosophical works implore you to question things in a way that, like the architect at 45 who's married and has a family and lives in Seattle.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why I just said Seattle, but it's okay. I think it'd be great if every night before he goes to bed, he spends 45 minutes
Brushing up on his Plato.
yeah, or reading Kierkegaard, or reading I don't know what's the most foundational, like Descartes, or or for like your Fanon, or like I don't know, like um Japanese philosophy, or like Latin American. Like, I don't really care what it to me what it is,
Mm.
as long as you're engaging with material that critically questions the world. Like, we want to, the name of your podcast is Critical Skeptic, and I'm assuming it's not just you that is the critical skeptic. You're trying to help other people. And correct me if I'm wrong, but like you would appreciate it. You're not proselytizing, but you would appreciate it if other people also approached issues with a critically skeptic point of view. Is that more or less correct?
Yeah, it's half of the reason why I named the podcast that.
But like
Yes.
that's what you would appreciate it if more people approached all issues in this world with a critically skeptic point of view.
I think we would live in a much healthier time, with much healthier people and much healthier discourse, if that were the case.
So I don't know. Like, do we sneak
No, we
poetics into every household? Like, do a giant Amazon delivery service. Here's your Amazon. Oh, there's
By
a
the
Plato's
way,
Republic in your mail? Did you order that?
whoa,
Whoa. Oh, and here's $50 at the end of the book if you finish it.
you skip to the last page, man. Come on, you can't.
No, it's like a lot. It's like
QR code.
you have a lock, and you like the code is like you have to read the entire thing to like unlock the $50.
We'll quiz you when you get to you've got to put in a code, and then we'll ask you a question about
Stimulus checks for people that can answer pop quiz questions on a philosophy book of their choice.
No, look, I mean, it's a nice idea. I don't look. I mean, like, back to your point earlier when we were talking about paying attention to things, right? Like, people have lives, right? Like, people, like,
Exactly.
it's a blessing if people like sit down and like take half an hour in the evening to read the Bible, right? Or some kind of foundational work like that, or even like not that, but sit down and read their kids a bedtime story, right? To find the time in the day to do that is a miracle, right? And which is
Look,
which is gone.
there's valuable lessons in those. One of the things that I've kind of fell in love with is like myths and fables. There's
Mm,
very valuable lessons in those things that are like super short. They're like parents reading to their kids is fantastic.
right, right. It's like the Emperor's New Clothes,
Yeah.
like these like the like yeah the I don't know what you call them. Yeah, fables, short stories. No, they're like they contain like wisdom and lessons learned from hundreds and hundreds of years, kind of condensed into a little short story.
And even if you're watching like a sitcom with your family at home at night for 30 minutes, like that's beautiful too.
No,
You
sure,
know?
no, no. All of these things are beautiful. So this is where my emphasis was on like how we educate educators, right? Like it's like because because you have this magical period when you're born and you're young, um, where you are one, you're very vulnerable, right? You are vulnerable, and to like historically and traditionally, right? You are like educated within a sort of family or a small community. It's in this modern world where we have sort of large state, where we send our children off to be educated by the state or by private institutions, and the and this I mean this is one of the other half of the reasons why I call my podcast The Critical Skeptic, is because there is this political activist theoretical movement known as critical theories, of race, sex, gender, and all other sorts. And I am skeptical of them and critical of them. So it's kind of a half little joke that I make to myself by naming my podcast that. The Critical Skeptic, skeptical of the critical. Anyway, only I find it funny. Doesn't matter. Um, but one of their emphasis, because they're concerned with like structural oppression, the Western liberal social order itself is inherently structurally oppressive, along the lines of race, sex, gender, class, and a whole bunch of other things. And one of their focuses has been explicitly on the radicalization of the field of education within the humanities and the social sciences. Right now, so we've had 60 odd years of increasingly radical educators, not necessarily conscious, because they're doing an undergraduate degree in something relatively harmless. They're doing their masters in teaching, and the very framework of what's being delivered in these programs is increasingly influenced by neo-Marxism and postmodernism, not of the sort of like critical analysis, of which there are some worthwhile aspects of both Marxism and the postmodern criticism, but of a very particular, potent, sort of activist-based politics, right? And so teaching and research within this domain becomes a political act, and then this explodes to the number of people who are in schools in the countries that you and I live in. We send our children to every day, right? You give your children to the state, and the people who are not all of them, again, but increasingly, more and more people at the administrative and the practical level have been through this kind of radical teacher training. And those are the people and those are the practices that I was referring to earlier about our children are now just being encouraged to embody their and lean into their emotionality. There is a thing called social emotional learning, which orients towards achieving exactly this. Rather than focusing on academic competencies, focuses on social competencies and emotional competencies, basically encouraging you to be socially aware of presupposed political arguments. Um, and and again, this is, I think, one of the questions of our time, right? Is Like, because again, we come back to editorial choice, because from their position, their justification for doing this is that the Enlightenment, with its sort of universal of ideas about what human beings are and of truth and of objectivity, that these things are kind of false, that they hide and mask power and oppression, and the only way to truly liberate people from this mode of society, this capitalistic neoliberal mode of society, is to get in at the educational level and essentially condition generations of young people to agitate and push back against this. Their criticism is that the liberal arts education that you were hinted at earlier is the thing that is the problem and needs to be subverted and moved beyond. Um, and so, like, it's difficult, and this is why you see a lot of people are leaving academia. A lot of people are setting up alternative educational institutions like Hillsdale College in the States, Ralston College in the States, Jordan Peterson's Academy, online academy thing. Like, there's loads of these sort of emergent things that are appearing because, again, the universities haven't shielded themselves from institutional capture. So these kinds of editorial questions about what do we expose people to, right? And why? Why do we expose people to what we expose them to? It's not just because there's a degree of, we'll take it on faith because we're the experts and we've done a philosophy degree, or we're the experts because I've done a radical feminist or black male studies class at the University of blah blah blah, right? Trust me, it's good for you to be exposed to these things. And that's a hard problem. I'm not landing on an answer here. I'm just like, because we've got these, again, we're back to the divisive point where it's, from the perspective of either of these positions, what the other one is up to is bad and not good morally. But I think empirically you can look at, where we are in society, and you can look at like people's ability to read and do mathematics and reason and shield themselves against manipulation. I think, but again, to do what I suggest would be called another kind of manipulation in and of itself. So it's a hard moment to be in and to figure out how we move forward in it is my point.
Do you think like the more ideas, the better?
Well, I don't think all ideas are equal. I think
No,
there are such things as good and bad ideas. I think.
no,
What do you mean by that? Sorry.
well, because when you were talking about when you were mentioning specific fields of study or degrees, I sense that there was like value judgments attached to those degrees, or those studies.
Sure.
You know, and I guess I think more exposure. Like I think a lot of times the issue is like people don't really know what people are referring to or talking about, and um like it would be super helpful. Like I don't think we're a dumb society. I don't think the human race is inherently stupid.
No.
And I think like we're capable of engaging and understanding, and like sometimes when you kind of shut out people's, oh no no no, you can't teach this, oh no no no, you can't do that, oh no 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 no, like it makes it so it's like that position automatically gains something or has value attached to it without actually understanding what it is. And like, I would honestly, like, I would love to see those kinds of theories, like public talks, you know,
Sure.
in parks, in
Right.
libraries, in, cafes, in um theater. Like I would love to see, like, honestly, I would love it if 2 blocks away, 2 blocks from each other, there was a talk, a lecture on um radical Marxist theories, and then on the other, at a local library, and then the other street at another cafe or a library, there was a talk um on, I don't know, I guess, like, um I don't even know where to go. Like, what's the like, whatever the opposite of that is.
Like a Milton Friedman school of laissez-faire capitalism or something like that.
Right. Like somebody saying, why the top 0.1% are destined to rule and everybody else should just bow to them.
Okay, well, yeah, fair enough. That's kind of
You know, like, whatever. Like,
no, I'm with you. I'm with you.
like that would be, I think, and then, and then people can go to both of those talks.
No, I look, I'm with you on that, but that's not what I'm talking about. We're talking about no, I agree with you because it's like because your point about well, no, you can't learn this or that gets people's backs up, right? But then the question is, okay, well, how do you choose? Right, and because let's split out what we're talking about here because I think like public talks and the exposure of people to these like to new ways of thinking and new ideas, I don't have a problem with. Right, you can read my read my work on my Substack. Shameless plug. Um, I'm a like free speech academic freedom guy. Right, like I do not need to like what you're saying. I don't need to agree with it. Right, I think you should be free to describe the world however it appears to you, and you should be free to say how you think things ought to be or ought not to be. You should be free to make normative claims. Right? You should be able to describe the social landscape and history and social structures however they appear to you, and you should be able to say what you think about how these things should be organized. Right? I've no problem with any of that, whether it's the radical feminism, black male studies, Marxists, postmodernists, whatever, right? The Milton Friedman School of Economics, pick a thing, right? I don't care, right? The academia is supposed to be the place where you are protected, right, by principle of academic freedom, so the political interests and the concerns of the general public aren't able to interfere with the exploration of ideas. The sandbox of ideas is open, as I've heard it be put, right? And because it is good for us to be able to take an idea, pull it apart, turn it upside down, right? I have no problem with that. I'm the more of that, the better, right? But when we're talking about education from the ages of 5 through to the ages of say 16 and 17, right? You have a finite amount of time, right, within which to provide something like an education. Now, the I guess and the philosophy behind what you're doing is important, right? So like the public school model of education, I think was originally based on a Prussian model, which was explicitly trying to make productive economic citizens to work in factories, right? Now, like it's like so like the reason why you're doing what you're doing at schools is important, and so that informs um the kinds of decisions that you make about what to expose children to when they're going through their education. And then when you and like you don't have to close these things off to people, right? Like you can, like, the world happens around them. I mean, you do have I think like parents have an obligation to protect their children from the world to a certain extent, right? That's like, that's why you're a child, right? You're vulnerable, right? And I think parents have a right to have a say in what goes on at their children's school. I don't think that the children don't belong to the state; they belong to the parents, right? And so, um, and you can disagree with that. That's fine, but this what we were talking about a second ago, right? With what you study at university, like, I have no problem with there being like black male studies at a university or radical feminism. I put myself down for some of these classes. I didn't get in. I assume they were very busy, right? But I'm not opposed to their existence or wouldn't have taken them myself. And then these things happening in the public sphere, yeah, grand. But that's a different context than the question of, like, how is it that you're educating the people who are going to grow up and occupy the society that we all have to share together moving forward? And again, like, we can look back and say, well, doing it that way was bad. That's a bad way of doing things. This had negative consequences, right? And again, I don't have an answer to this, by the way. I know I proposed one earlier about the tools and skill sets, but I think you can do that. Because you can teach. Yeah, actually, hang on. Yeah, I don't know. You can introduce the idea to like a 16, 17-year-old class in statistics or mathematics, or like, like a critical thinking of like introduction to philosophy class, that there's different modes of logic. You've got your analytical propositional logic, and then there's this thing called dialectical logic. It's different, right? You don't need to know much more than that at that stage, but those two things exist, and off you go out into the world, right? And like the analytic school, if you want to go and do engineering or computer science or these kinds of things, your propositional logic is going to be really important. And if you're more interested in kind of the social, social enterprises, and maybe you're interested in a bit of activism, or that you're concerned about world politics or things going on in the world, well, a lot of the theory that this is runs on dialectical logic. And it's to do with the combination of opposites, which doesn't work in analytical philosophy because they have the law of non-contradiction, right? That takes fucking 30 seconds, right? And so you can give that to people, and they can forget it, they can remember it, they can do what the fuck they want with it, and off they go. So I think you can capture both of those traditions in a lesson, in a classroom with 15 and 16-year-olds, because I just did it then a second ago, right? And I think you can do that, right? And then you leave them to it, right? You don't come in and you say, no, we only do critical thinking in the Western Marxian sense. We only do change as the main focus, not truth, right? Or truth is the main focus, give no regards to social change, right? I think we can. I don't know. I think we can do both these things.
I mean, one of the benefits of you're good. One of the benefits of like math or sciences or STEM or whatever is the curriculum is less fungible, which means it's easier to standardize the curriculum across wide amounts of space.
Sure.
Whereas liberal arts, humanities, the degrees are much more up to the discretion of the individual school and the people that are teaching them. And even if you say like all public schools are going to read these books, I could be a teacher who, let's say the curriculum includes Aristotle, Marx, Fanon, Sally Haslinger, Descartes, Hegel, and
old Nietzsche.
I was gonna say the Italian guy, Grumzetti,
Okay.
right?
I've never heard of him.
Gramsci
Oh,
is his name.
Gramsci. Okay.
Gramsci. Um, and it's me and like I'm teaching, somebody else is teaching, and somebody else is teaching, and like this curriculum is for like 30 schools, standardized. I'm a, a, I have a personal affinity for Aristotle. So even though everybody's going to be teaching that, my class, my students, I'm going to probably, because I'm interested and I want other people to be interested, I'm probably going to like teach it in such a way, in a more enthusiastic way. I'm going to be like I'm going to give off something that makes those students that is going to show that I want more people to be interested in, and therefore in turn probably going to make those students more likely to be interested and adopt something similar to my views.
Mm-hmm.
Not all, but I'm going to make them more inclined. And if somebody loves Hegel or loves Haslinger, loves, she's still going to teach the other things, but you're going to pick up on the fact that she likes Haslinger and that she likes those views, and that's going to rub off on the students.
Sure. Well, sorry, what level are we talking about here of education?
Okay, I just use those books as an example of philosophy books, but I'm saying, we could do this for more simple books for like high school or middle school, right? It could be Hemingway and Frankenstein and like even just take one book like Frankenstein. The things that I pay attention to in Frankenstein are going to be different than what 50% or 99% of the students in some way what those other teachers focus on. And so what the kids are going to pull from my class is probably going to be different than what other students pull exactly from another class. That's just the way humanities work. And it's partly the beauty of it. It's that
messy.
Everybody can teach one book or 3 books, but they get something different out of it. What I would say is, if you want to combat the fact that one group of people continue to just get one point of view, you can make a point of trying your best to, hire a diverse range of, teachers with a diverse range of viewpoints, but that's really hard. Like when you're hiring somebody in your public school or whatever, it's really hard to be like, well, we want one person who's in love with Aristotle, one person who's in love with some of it is just like chance. Like, if I'm going to school in Cleveland, Ohio, and I happen to go to this public school and my teacher loves Aristotle, that's going to influence me later on to probably have an affinity for Aristotle, and I'm going to go to university and I'm probably going to study more Aristotle. And that's just chance.
Sure.
I could have gone to a school that loves a guy that loves Hegel, and I fall in love with Hegel, and then I want to study Hegel.
Sure.
Right? Some of that is chance. But I think also there needs to be more of these public spaces. Like libraries, I think the value of public libraries, community libraries, has been lost, I think.
Right. I think so too.
Like after school, kids go to the library, they see all the books there, and they're just browsing and they pick up one, they read it, piques their interest, and then or libraries hold like talks with all different people. So I don't think schools are a great thing to focus on because their purpose is education and kids go there for education. But I don't think that should be the sole focus of education for kids. I don't think that should be that's one area, but I think kids should learn from a diverse range of institutions and communities and things. And rather than trying to focus on making education as perfect as it is, we should focus more on creating more um,
Sure.
outlets and values for students and young kids to learn and explore ideas.
Sure. I think that's perfectly noble. But I think that the problem that you have with early school education is time, right? You don't have a lot of time, right? Like, if you blow up the number of classes you have, to try and get in as much as possible, right? There's opportunity cost, right? So, like you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? If you spend time looking at one thing, you can't spend that time looking at something else, which is why I think something like, and I'm going to take a part of what you've said here, right? Is that getting the basics right within the framework of schooling, like your maths, English, science, and we can add sort of like computer training skills because we live in that world now, right? You can like get the four things right, get the basics right, and then invest time in either a good library at school or access to a public library, so that you leave time in the day, right, for you to take take them to the library, and you can say and have and you can have this diverse array of all different kinds of books from all different kinds of traditions, right? And you can have, I don't know, maybe some posters on the wall that give summaries of a few different categories and traditions. And you can take them to the wall and you can say, well, read these different posters about these different things. And this is the area in which you can find books about this, this, and this. And then you've got an hour and a half now, go and find some books that pique your interest. And there's a corner in the room there for when you've finished reading, you can sit down with each other and you can share it, or you can talk about it, or you can debate. And then you can, again, I'm back to that. It's not just sitting them down and lecturing them about what's available or how to conduct themselves. It's getting them to do it and do it organically. And then because once they've done that and they've moved through that kind of schooling, they're just going to go and do it in the world, right? Some of them are just going to go and get jobs and live lives and be fine, right? Not a problem. But some of them are going to go to university and do different things. And some of them are going to go set up coffee houses or salons or start putting on events. And they'll not only will they have the interest and capacity to do that because they've been practicing it, they'll also have spent the time at school getting the basics of mathematics, English, reading, writing, science, and computer technology, right? And maybe one other thing or something. But like the problem I think you have is time, and how do you choose about what to do? So you should do the things that are going to be the most impactful, the most universally applicable, and then provide time and resources to a wide array of ideas and a wide array of modes of thinking and engaging with the world. How does that sound as an idea?
I think that's a great point about time. And one thing I'll say is like, and I'm just gonna warn you that at some point soon I'll be banging on the roof because this roof guy's coming. But
That's okay. Well,
um,
we can wrap it up in the next 15.
but I was gonna say is like, I think there's this false like conception that like people have when they finish a degree at university.
Mm.
Whatever it be, like undergrad, master's, PhD. It's like once you exit school, once you exit academia, the learning stops.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, like, you finished a degree, you finished a undergraduate, great, you got your feet wet. That's what you did. You did a master's, great. In one particular area, you soaked your body. And then you did a PhD, all right, great. You left your hand in the hot tub for an hour. Like you're super soaked in like your hand or like one body part.
Mm.
But there's so much more that you are not knowledgeable about and need to explore and need to learn. And I think like an emphasis on universities are just places to explore ideas, but they're not places where like learning starts and finishes.
Right.
I think the way society kind of talks about universities and institutions, like, I graduated, I learned everything, now I can like just go out and do stuff because I stopped learning. Like, no, no, like university is a place to explore ideas and helps you be in an environment with people who are trying to do the same thing, but the education cannot be limited to that.
Yeah, I think I also bumped into a lot of people who, because again, so many more people. These institutions are so much more open to people than they used to be. Which I don't think is a good thing in and of itself. I think it could be. There are some prerequisites for that being a good thing, but I think again, how a lot of people think about universities is that, like, no, they're just there for the ticket, right? That there's this idea of, I have to go to university for 3 or 4 years because then somebody gives me a piece of paper, and that piece of paper lets me in some doors somewhere else, right? And I'm less concerned about the substance of my education because all I want is to get through the door. And the piece of paper you give me is a key, and that gets me in the door, right? And that, and once I'm in the door, I can bullshit my way, or I can fake it till I make it, or I can do whatever, right? But I want to get into the door. And I bumped into that a lot, and I had a lot of teachers express their frustrations at that attitude. And I sat in third and fourth, more third year, but I had a number of classes that were so uncomfortable and so awkward because it was a seminar. There's 20 of us in the room and 2 people are engaging.
I
And
was the second person.
you were. But everyone else was just sat there staring at the desk or staring at their laptop and not engaging. And they were like, for whatever reason, but I can only assume because they would they just wanted to get through the year. They weren't concerned about like the substance of what they were there to do. They had this again, it's that what like to your, we finish and then we're done. And but then again, but I think because universities have become like complicated places, right? Because there's the stuff to do just because it's good to do it. Things like philosophy and a lot of the humanities. But then there are also places to train you, like to train and hone a skill. You go and become a doctor. You go and become a lawyer, right? You go and become fucking pick another thing, an engineer, right? A physicist, right? They're places to train as well, right? And then there's like a murky line between the stuff that it's just good to do for its own sake and the stuff that's being done for some other end, right? And in often cases now, because it's like, I don't know, we've like see my problem when I said earlier about too many, like, lots of people being at universities, because the problem with opening it up to as many people as possible is you have to lower the standards of what's required of you to get in, and you have to lower the standards of what's required for you to get through. And otherwise they remain exclusive. If the standards, if it's hard for you to get in and hard for you to get through, only a small number of people get in and a smaller number of people get through. Right? If what you want is to get as many people, and again, this is a focus on appearance rather than substance, right? Because at least in my country in the 90s, there was this big push, education, education, education. But it wasn't education, education, education. It was seeming education, right? We have a population that looks like it's been educated because a large number of people have undergraduate degrees that are now increasingly worthless, right? Because everybody has one, right? If everybody's special, nobody's special, right? You undermine the value of these things. Not in every case. I'm not saying they're all completely useless, but right? Do you see it's not a popular position. I get that, but it's
Well, look, like if you go to school, is school free? No. You have to pay for a lot of money to go to these universities. And most people are not able to, they need to take out loans. Who's taking out loans from?
Yeah.
And then most people can't pay that back immediately, so there's interest. And
the university is getting guaranteed a paycheck.
So it's a business, right? More people go to university. That's, more money.
Yeah, perverse incentives is, again,
And private universities in the US are particularly bad about that. Yeah, I don't know. But
Okay. Well, look, let's we haven't fixed the world just yet. We're close. I think we're close. But let's take 5 or 10 minutes and
have we made it worse though? Have we made the world worse?
We'll find out.
Okay.
But no, I want to ask you. Let's take 5 minutes or 10 minutes to talk about moving forward. What's the next 2, 3, 5 years of Athenianus's life looking like? Or 6 weeks if you're.
I'm, as cliche as it sounds, yes, I could tell you things that my goals and things that I hope for. And I will, but not right now.
Okay. That's fine.
For specific reasons, which I'll tell you off camera.
Fine.
But I would just say that, like, right now I'm focused on the present. And one of the things that I've started doing, which I think is really nice, and I have it right here, is I have my notebook, and I use it exclusively for daily reflections. And each day and night I just write down all of my thoughts. And it's like I'm writing a letter to somebody. But it's just for me. Maybe I'll read it later on, or maybe a family member will read it later on. But it's helped me decompress and
Nice.
Just process the days as they go by, because we don't realize how much happens in a day, in a month, in a year, 3 years, and how much we actually do. And it's kind of helped me really conceptualize that. It's like, no, actually, you may think that, like, it's just one big blimp, but there's so many thoughts, so many things, so many moments in just one day that when you add it all up, it's really a lot. It's really a lot. And I think sometimes it's helpful for us to reflect upon that and realize that. So that's one habit that I picked up in August.
Nice.
In late August, and I've been continuing, and I highly recommend it for everybody out there. I'm going to continue doing my podcast, which I've in the middle process of a name change.
Exciting.
Which I'll also tell you about off camera, but
don't want to spoil the reveal.
Well, no, because I changed it on Spotify. I just haven't changed it on YouTube.
Okay.
It's the name is the Icarus Inspired Podcast.
Okay. Don't get too close to the sun.
Well,
otherwise you'll make some big ripples.
I think actually, there's reason to admire Icarus, actually. You can say what you want about his mistakes, but ultimately he knew that there was danger in going too close to the sun and being too ambitious, but he wasn't afraid. He did it anyway. And I think at the very least, there's reason to admire that he wasn't afraid. He knew what he was getting into, but he wasn't afraid for reaching, you know, for the skies and for continuing to aim towards his goal, even though he knew there was danger. Um, that didn't
Quality.
stop him. But yeah, I'm doing a lot of short daily reflections, audio reflections as well, which I release in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. And those have kind of been short, fun, because I think I've a little less time to do like longer 2-hour things, which I still am doing and I'm trying to do, but you can check those out on Spotify, Apple Music, my Substack, which maybe Matthew will be so kind to put a link to in the description.
Of course.
Um, and yeah, that's me.
Nice, man. Good. Well, that all sounds very promising, and I'm looking forward to hearing.
And you can read my articles at thedailycatch .com. Mostly writing about local government, new businesses, farming stuff, and as I said at the beginning, a lot of bureaucracy.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Um, well, dude, thank you very much, man. This has been great. I've really enjoyed this. This has been everything I wanted it to be and more. So and it's been really good to see you. It's been a long time since we've
Long time indeed. Indeed. I need to find a way to get across the pond. Um, I miss Edinburgh. I
me too.
do I
Me
have
too.
to say I do miss uh those 4 years went by really quickly, particularly the last three,
It
because
did. Yeah.
first one was COVID. And
It was weird.
reflecting back, and I wish I had done this journal um when I was there, because there's so many memories and so many things that I think back on, and um I miss that time, you know? We had a really, really good group, and I know we have our monthly reading book. I'm trying my best to read the books. Sometimes I don't make it through the whole thing. Don't tell
Yeah, I
Philip.
don't. I don't finish them. Sometimes I didn't finish the last one.
I didn't either. I didn't either. Um, it's hard, but I log on because I want to see everybody's face, and
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, it's good to touch base with the
um,
people.
and it would be nice to do in U.S. schools they have like a 5-year reunion type of thing, 5, 10-year, 20-year reunion. It
Right.
would be nice if we could get together, um, maybe that's 3 years from now, and do you know, some sort of a reunion.
I'd be
Uh,
keen.
I think that would be nice.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. No, man, it's yeah, they were an incredible 4 years. I learned a lot, learned that I didn't know a lot. I met some really great people. Um, and you're always a voice of calm wisdom when I needed to hear it.
Appreciate that. Well, listen, I think I talked about this before, but I still think about like when we decided to do that Israel Palestine thing and how crazy that was, and
Yeah, we wild.
we had a couple moments before the thing happened where like I thought we were gonna kill each other. Um, we worked it out somehow. I had like my eye was all fucked up because I had
Yeah,
a
it was. Oh shit,
massive
yeah.
allergic reaction, and we
Walking
weren't
around
able to
with
pull
sunglasses.
off. Yeah, we weren't able to pull off the second and third event because people were just too stubborn. But we pulled off the first, and it really. Um, I know you're not on social media or whatever, but there's been so many people who have just been like had such a positive response to
That's good
that
to hear, man. That's good to hear. I'm
that
pleased about that.
event, and the number is in the hundreds of thousands of people that have
Oh wow,
engaged.
really?
Yeah,
Oh shoot. I didn't realize. I didn't realize.
yeah.
Amazing.
Um,
We made a ripple, man.
we made a ripple. We made a ripple. Um, we also got a lot of attention to Mr. McHugo and Dr. Allenson. I don't think they're fully aware that they've got a lot of people interested in them on social media, and but
I'm sure they won't mind.
if they sell more books, I'm sure they'll be happy.
Exactly. Nice, man. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us. This has been Athenianos, and we'll see you on
Thank
the
you.
next one. Take care of yourself, everybody.